Hello, people. You're welcome to ProUp Masterclass. My name is Tola T.A. Alabi, and this podcast is pretty interesting to me because I was just dropped off my kids at school, and driving back home, I had this prompting in my soul to record on this subject matter I'm about to talk about right now. And I'm a very spiritual person, so I don't joke with promptings I have in my soul. And so I just parked the car and brought out my mic. So I always have my mic with me in the car, and just decided to record this now because I realized that now is the time. And this very act I just took to record this thing right now without planning for it, just like parking in the middle of nowhere in between my kids' school and my house, is actually what I'm going to talk about today. What seems like the haphazardness of spiritual leading. And this is what I'm going. I really feel this is an important subject matter to talk about. So I don't know how long this podcast might be. It might be very short. It might be long. I don't know. But when I'm done with what I have prompting in my heart to say, I would stop the podcast. But I think it's very important for me to say this right now. Um, you know, I did a podcast on this thing called your soul. So if you've not listened to it, I encourage you to go back and listen to it. It's called This Thing Called Your Soul, where I talked about the essence of the soul and the part it plays in guiding us and guiding our activity through this place called Earth, and helping us to know the things we ought to be doing with our lives. Um, and someone in my mentoring group asked the question after listening to that podcast. And it was a pretty good question. And he said, okay, if you're going to be listening to what your soul is telling you to do, and a lot of it is influenced by the spirit that you have teaching your soul in a particular direction. Remember, I said the soul is an accumulation of knowledge, of raw knowledge, directly from God, that is not dependent on education or experience, and it has a lot of the answers you need in life. Um, and I said, you need to listen to your soul. You need to listen to your soul. And he said, what if your soul is telling you to do two different things? Um, you know, and I'm going to try to explain this because he was trying to ask the question and it seemed confusing, but I took some time to think about it. So I will try to explain what is saying in that question. It's saying, what if your soul is asking you to do one activity today, and tomorrow it's asking you to do another activity that doesn't seem to be a continuation of the activity you did yesterday, and then the next day is asking you to do something else. So today your soul is telling you go out and draw, and tomorrow your soul is not telling you go out and bake, and the next day your soul tells you um, go out and sing. It seems like you now have no focus in life. On the outside, it seems like you have no focus in life, and it now seems like you are a spiritually restless person. It seems like you're just restless, just going from one thing to the other. And I thought that was a pretty interesting question, because the reality of the matter is this is very possible, where your soul is telling you to do activities that seem like they do not converge, divergent activities, not activities that cancel out each other. So that's a different thing, where your story is telling you to tell the truth today and tell a lie tomorrow. Those things conflict. I'm not talking about conflicting activities. I'm talking about divergent. It seems like there is no meeting point. So on the outside, you are scared of looking like a confused person with no focus. Now, this brings us to what I want to talk about today. This seeming haphazardness of a leading that the soul can tell you to do. And now it's saying, should you follow your soul, or should you just commit to something? Now, as good as committing to something is, I want us to understand that life is not really about a commitment to a cause. I think it's very important that we understand this. The reason we are alive is not particularly to leave a legacy, to leave a mark. And that is good, to leave a legacy, leave a mark, but that's not why we're alive. The reason we are alive is to do the will of God and to please God. I think we must understand that we are not alive for ourselves. We are alive for something much bigger than us. We are alive to add to this orchestra of God's perfect symphony. You are meant to play your part. I know when you look at that orchestra, they're all looking at a conductor. Everybody looks at the conductor, and the conductor tells you what to do. When it tells you to stop, you stop. When it tells you to continue playing, you play. You see, the conductor becomes your brain. So you don't need to understand where the conductor is going. You just need to trust the conductor. And this is where it gets hard. It's hard because there's a new age religion in the world today that people are not particularly aware of. So it's kind of sliding into people's lives, sipping into people's life. And people do not even know this thing is seeping into their lives. It's a new religion that people are adopting that they don't know they're adopting. They've been world religions that have been established over time. There's been faiths that have been established like Christianity, Islam, Buddhism. All those things have been around for a while. But there's a new age religion called motivation. Motivation. It's a new age religion that we must be careful of because it seems on the outside very good, but sometimes it's the strongest opposition to spiritual living. Motivation. A new age religion. And this new age religion called motivation is centered and built around principles that make logical sense. They make sense logically. And as I've said before in previous podcasts, that the biggest opposition to spirituality is rationality, logic. Logic is your brain against your soul and your spirit. Your brain against your soul. You understand? So logic and motivation is based on logic. So its foundation is built on buzzwords like focus, consistency, tenacity, don't give up, things like that, relationships. You see, these things are very, very good. You understand? These words are not viceful words, they are virtuous words. But then they are not the core of the human life. Those things are not things that lead you. That focus, tenacity, consistency, and those things are good, but they are not God. Because sometimes there's a need for you to stop and appear like you are giving up. There are sometimes there's a need for you to be spontaneous and not be so structured. Sometimes spirituality is so spontaneous. So sometimes when you see someone that is spiritual, they seem like they have no focus. But that's not true. It's just that they are not led by their own mind, their rational mind that says, I did this thing today, so I must continue tomorrow. So people feel I have a focus. You see, we are created to do the will of God. That's the truth. And the will of God is way bigger than our brains. So we must be careful of this newfound religion, this new age religion called motivation, because it tells you focus. What you were doing yesterday, continue doing it tomorrow. Do it for the next 5 years so that people know you for it. That's not as important. You understand why you must be spiritual? Don't get stuck with this. People know me for this thing. You are not created, you are not put on the world for people to know you. You are put here for people to know God better, not to know you better. For people to understand God better, not to understand you better. You see, motivation puts the self at the center. That's the biggest problem in motivation. It's self-help, not God help. It is a good idea, not a God idea. So we must be very careful of this new religion called motivation. The holy books of motivation are all these self-help books you find around you. There's so many of them right now. So many telling you about time, telling you about habits, telling you about thinking, telling you about stuff, telling you about focus, telling you about showing up. That show up is such a buzzword right now. Show up every day. Show up every day. But sometimes spirituality tells you don't show up for the next 2 years. That is counterintuitive to what we call motivation today. Show up, build an audience, build a following, build a tribe, build a team. All those things are motivation. And as I said, they are not bad, but they are not the height. Because it puts us at the center, not God. And motivation can build an addiction called attention. You see, a lot of what we do for motivation is for ourselves, how we are seen, to build a liking, to have an impact. I have so many people that tell me about, I just want to have an impactful life. So their aim is for them to be impactful. I want to be impactful. And what a lot of people see as impactful is scale. Many people, many likes, their message going far and wide. You see, so people don't understand that there's impact in affecting one and dying just affecting one. It sounds very, very doesn't sound like success, right? That you lived your life and you affected one person. You understand? You influenced one person and that was it. It doesn't sound like 500,000 people. So you see a lot of people with, even churches, we see them with grand missions, companies, grand missions, grand. You understand? The grander it is, the more ambitious it seems. But we are not here for ambition. We are here for submission. We must understand that. So it's not about how you look to the outside world. It's about being true to what your spirit is teaching your soul to do. And sometimes they do not converge. You must be honest with yourself. So as long as you're being true to your soul, forget about how things match up, how it converges. That doesn't really matter. You understand? It doesn't really matter. You must just be obedient to your soul. You must be obedient. Like when I read the Bible and I read the life of Jesus, there are so many times Jesus quotes Isaiah. A lot of times he says just to fulfill, and this fulfills what the prophet Isaiah said or what the prophet said. But do you know how many years was between Jesus and Isaiah? We're talking about centuries here. And that tells me that a lot of what Isaiah said, for people that are Christians listening to this, a lot of what Isaiah said and prophesied never happened in his time. The fulfillment happened hundreds of years later. That means he never saw what the soul and his spirit was telling him to prophesy. And that means Isaiah might have felt like his life wasn't going anywhere because he was saying stuff that wasn't coming to pass till the day he died. His children came. I don't know whether he had children, but then his relatives, offspring, people around him would have felt this guy was a false prophet. Nothing happened for hundreds of years. They came, they died, they came, they died, and nothing happened till hundreds of years when Jesus came and things started happening that this prophet has said centuries ago. So if Isaiah went by what I say must happen for me to continue doing it, then he would feel like a failure. But you must realize it's not about us. It's not about building our own brand. You understand? It's not about building our own impression or the impression we want other people to have of us. That's the problem I have with self-help. It's because it's self and not God. And it can be very misleading. So forget about whether the activities converge or they diverge. Think about whether you are sure those activities are by God's leading, are coming from your soul. They are not strategic, they are spiritual. very important for us to have our minds on spiritual things, not particularly logical things. That's the difficulty with spirituality. Sometimes to the outside world, you are going to appear like a loony. You must be ready for that. And that's what it means to lose your life. When the Bible says, he who is going to follow me must be ready to lose their life. That those who will lose their life will gain it, and those who are trying to gain their life will lose it. It's for things like this. Things that losing your life doesn't particularly mean dying. It means just looking to the outside world like you don't have a life. You don't have a structured life. So those things like structure is good. You understand? But structure sometimes it's very logical. You understand? And sometimes the spiritual person doesn't seem structured. It seems like he accepts one thing today, and the next day he's saying, I don't feel led to accept this thing. So it seems like there's no structure. You understand? It seems haphazard. It seems spontaneous. But we must be careful. We must be careful about trying to leave a good impression of ourselves rather than a godly impression. That's the difficulty in following God. So we must be careful. This new age religion called motivation is a very dangerous thing. And I'm going to say this, and I stand to be corrected, but I think the Christian faith is the one that has been most affected by this or permeated by this new age thinking called motivation, the Christian faith. So there's a thin line between what is Christianity in terms of spirituality and motivation. So a lot of times you see people that are motivational speakers that present themselves as spiritual leaders. But they are motivational speakers. But they have churches. They have a congregation. Do you understand? But they are motivational speakers. So when they talk to you, they are talking to you logically. When they teach you about things, they're teaching you logically. And they are very good orators. They can articulate themselves well. They are great with words, but you need to be careful with them. You understand? So sometimes it's hard to know whether you're going for a business seminar or you're going to church. You understand? They are motivational speakers. Different categories of them. Some of them are motivational speakers for finances. Some of them are motivational speakers for emotions. Some of them are motivational speakers for relationships. But you need to be careful. They sound good. They sound structured. They are making sense, but they are far from spiritual. They are shutting up your soul more than amplifying what the truth your soul is leading you to. So I just feel very led to talk about this. We need to be very careful about the books we read. And that's why if you're a Christian, self-help books, good, but those things do not hold a candle to the Bible. You must be very careful. The Bible is the truth. That's what's going to lead you. That's it. You understand? There's no greater book. You understand? No greater book. I don't care how best-selling it is, how much sense it makes. We are not sense people. We must recognize that there's a level above sense, which is spirituality. We must understand that. So it's not about how you look. It's about what God tells you to do per time. So we become so strategic, so ambitious, so scheming, you understand, so ordered. Even some of you in posting on your social media, you are so ordered. You are so concerned about the order of your social media page, how it looks, what you post today, what you do, how it looks. But sometimes God is telling you, yeah, break that structure. You understand? So and the truth is that I battle with this too myself. There was a time I was just thinking, oh, I want my social media to just be full of my quotes. You understand? My thoughts. But then after a while, I started getting a spiritual leading to create artwork, AI artwork, and I thought, can I be putting this out there on my page? It's breaking that branding of the page. But then I realized it's not about my branding. I'm not here to brand myself. I'm here to be obedient. And if that means my page looks like a mess, then the page looks like a mess. But it's a godly mess, if there's anything like that. A godly mess makes more sense than a logical order. A godly mess makes more sense than logical order, because what seems like a mess to us at close view, at the end of our lives, when we see our lives from the top, not from within it, we realize how much it makes sense and how everything eventually converges. So I hope someone listens today and, and you resist the temptation to be led by your mind and embrace the allure of being led by God.